I think I heard the chime, and I think everyone's starting to come in. So I got a lot of stuff to go over. So this could have been a really big message, but I really had to trim it down. Many of you already know who I am. Many of you know a little bit about me, but some of you may not be aware as to what it is that I do. For some of you, I'm just the guy that shows up on Sunday morning. I like to wear plaid, blue jeans, black baseball caps, and I have a beard. And I do the videos for Connect Church. But during the week, I got a picture that I want to show you guys. So some of you may not know, that's what I look like during the week. So I generally wear a suit, and that photo on the left there, that's a photo of who I work with. The guy sitting in the red chair that looks like the Godfather, that's my father. That is Dan Poirier Sr. I am Dan Poirier Jr. I'm actually Daniel Poirier the Fourth. Yeah. And me and my family, what we do is we have a private wealth management firm. We're called Poirier & Associates Private Wealth Management. And we work with people with their finances. So finances are definitely in my wheelhouse. My dad's been in financial services his entire working career for over 40 years. Me, likewise, pretty well my entire working career has been in financial services of some kind for about the last 15 years. So Frank asked me to speak this week in our financial series, and he asked me, let's get that picture off. We don't need to see that anymore. Frank asked me to speak this week on debt. And if you struggle with debt or if you feel any kind of financial stress, the next 2 weeks are going to be very important for you. Okay? If you're just checking this thing out and you're checking church out and all that kind of stuff, this week is going to be very important for you. But if you identify as a Christ follower, this week and more importantly, next week are going to be crucial for you. This week is going to kind of be foundational, and if you're a Christ follower, next week is going to be the message that you're really going to need to hear, okay? So what I want you to do is, if you've got your phone, before you forget, just go in there right now. I don't mind seeing the glowing lights and stuff. Put it into your calendar if you had plans to do something else. Put it in there with a reminder, I got to be at Connect Church next Sunday morning, okay? So what I want to do with this message is I want to pretend that this is one of my appointments that I do with a client or a prospective client, okay? And what I do when I sit down with someone for the first time is I always ask them this question. I always ask them, if we were sitting here 3 years from today and we were looking back those 3 years to right now, what do you want to see happen both personally and professionally in order for you to feel happy with your progress? And let's pretend that I asked you that question, and these were your 3 answers, okay? These were the top 3 things that you want to focus on over the next 3 years. Number 1, I want to be debt-free. Number 2, I'd like to reduce my financial stress. And number 3, I'd like to have money in savings. Now, the reason why I want to pretend that these are the 3 things that you want to work on is because for many of you, you're sitting there right now and you're going, man, 11, does this guy have like video cameras in my house or something? Or has he been reading my mail? Which isn't the case. I don't have video cameras in anybody's house. But when I sit down with 90% of people, this is what 90% of the people say are their top 3 priorities. And this is important because we've got another slide I want to put up there. Frank had it up there last week. It's a picture of 2 ostriches. And what happens is, we can't see the quote very well, but it says, the one ostrich says, my finances are great too. And both of them have their head in the sand. And what happens is we can look at our situation and we can feel all this stress about what's going on in our lives, and we'll look at the people around us and we'll say, well, they got it all together. And they're doing well. Look at what their family is able to do. Look what they do for a job, and look what they have. And look at my situation, and I gotta kind of try and keep up with that. And if everybody knew what was going on in everybody's household, we would realize that a lot of people are really stressed out about their finances. Frank also, this was really cool. Frank actually, he kind of gave a lot of the stuff that I was going to talk about today. So I'm not gonna get into depth on that stuff. If you weren't here last week, if you missed his message, go back and listen to it. He's got some really important stuff in there, and he really laid a good foundation for this series. So go back and listen to it online. You can watch it, you can listen to it. But here's some general information on debt, which I was really shocked about this one. We've got that debt statistic. Can you put that up on the screen there? So what this is, we can't see it very well, but this is Canada's debt-to-income ratio in 2010 and then in 2014. Now, this is an important number because this is before oil got cut in half. This is before everything in Alberta started happening, which is affecting us here today. So back in 2014, Canada was the G7 country with the highest debt-to-income ratio. We look at the United States and we see them as being the bastion of ill financial decisions and poor financial health and massive amounts of debt. And Canadians are actually worse off. In 2014, before what's going on right now, we were worse off at that point. Which was, when Frank showed this last week, this was a huge eye-opener. I mean, I certainly see it, but when you show it on a graph, it's quite something. Most families are actually one paycheck away from bankruptcy. What that means is, if a family misses one paycheck, they're going to start missing bill payments. When my dad started in this business, he said the average person usually had about $300 in savings in their bank account. And today that number is a negative 1,000. Most people tend to be in lines of credit on a revolving basis. Most people are in what we call insolvent. And so what we do as financial advisors is we'll accumulate, we'll get people to write down what the list of their assets are and what the list of their liabilities are. And if you compare the two, most people owe more in debt than what they have in assets. So if in one day their creditors came to them and they said, we want all of our money back, we want the loans paid back right now, most people would not have the assets to get rid of, sell, liquidate, whatever, to get rid of all that stuff and pay their creditors back. And so people are technically, they are insolvent or bankrupt. The other thing is that I've noticed, and I've been thinking about this for a while, is the whole idea. There used to be a thing called indentured slavery. And what would happen is many years ago, long time ago, what would happen is something would happen in your life, or you would want to buy something, or whatever it may be, and you didn't have the money for it, or you didn't have the resources, you didn't have the income. So what you would do is you would go to someone and you would say, I want to buy this piece of land, or whatever it may be, or I had this problem came up. We've been suffering from a famine for the last 3 years or whatever. And so I'm a little behind. And so what I want to do is in order to get back to where I was, or in order to buy this piece of land, what I want to do is I want to kind of indenture myself to you. I want to work for you. I want you to take on my debt, and I'm going to become your slave. And we think of this as being a concept of long ago. And here's the actual description of it. This is pulled from Wikipedia. An indentured servant or an indentured laborer is an employee or an indenturee within a system of unfreed labor. So someone who is indentured, they weren't paid, but they are bound by a contract or an indenture to work for a particular employer for a fixed period of time. The employer is often permitted to assign the labor of an indenturee to a third party. So they'll hold the debt, but they can have their slave, or the person that's indentured to them, they can have them go out and work for someone else in order to pay the debt to them. Indenturees usually enter into an indenture for a specific payment or other benefit, or to meet a legal obligation such as a debt bondage. In many countries, systems of indentured labor have been outlawed, but not in Canada. Now, we don't think of it as being slavery, but in a lot of cases, people are in slavery. because we've amassed this amount of debt. And if you ever talk to someone, have you ever talked to someone and they say, I hate my job. I hate what I do. But why do they do it? Because they have to. They got to make those payments. And they are, if you ask them, they say, I feel like a slave. And so the face has changed, but the spirit behind it is very much still alive today. So, why is debt important from a biblical perspective? Why do we need to be talking about this in church? Frank gave us 2 verses last week, which again, I'm just going to build off of what Frank talked about last week. The first one is Matthew 6:21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And what Frank said last week, he challenged us. He said, would you be willing to bring in your bank statement? Would you be willing to bring in your credit card statement? And would you be willing to show it to people? And if we did that, what people would see is they would see where our priorities are. They would see what we value. Where our treasure goes, that's what we value most. And it's funny, if you follow the paper trail, if you follow the money, that's where everything else follows as well. So where the money goes, that's where your time is going to go. That's where your passion is going to go. That's where your energy is going to go. Luke 16:13, Frank gave this one last week as well. No one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. God is very concerned with how we handle our finances, and this is what Frank talked about last week. The Bible talks about money more than any other topic. And as followers of Christ, we're called to be good stewards of what God has given us. We're supposed to control our money and use it as a tool and not let it control us. And how we choose to spend our money, what we choose to spend it on, is directly related to our relationship with God, I believe. Okay? What people will say, and I know I've been guilty of this at times in my life, is they'll say, God, I trust you. God, I love you. God, I believe in you. But when it comes to my money and my stuff, I'm gonna control this part. I'm gonna look after this part. But I trust you in everything else. I believe in you. I praise you. I love you. But I'm gonna look after my money. This is mine. Who remembers what happened in 2008? If any of us were alive, we all remember what happened in 2008. This was the world financial crisis. Everything was coming to an end. Okay. The U.S. housing market had just crashed. Stock market had dropped 40%. And at that point, who was now becoming the president of the United States? Barack Obama was becoming the president of the United States. And one of the things that happened as a result of that financial crisis was the U.S. automakers were in a shambles. It was like they had made poor financial decisions while things were going good because they didn't think the party was ever going to end. And all of a sudden, the ballroom is deserted, the balloons are all popped, the tables are overturned, the chairs are busted, and General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler are left standing there, and they're going, what just happened? We thought this would never end. We thought we would just always be selling new vehicles. And everything, the well just dried right up, and these companies were on the verge of financial collapse. What was Obama's solution? Bail them out. And what was the public reaction? What was everybody's reaction to Obama's idea of bailing out the auto companies, the CEOs that had made millions and millions of dollars every year and had not used their finances properly? What was the public's reaction to Obama's solution of bailing out the automakers? Everyone was outraged. They were like, let them burn, let them crash. It's their own fault. They've spent this money the way they shouldn't have. Like, just let them sink. But Obama bailed them out. And how often do we say, God, I love you, God, I trust you, but I'm going to look after this. I'm going to hold on to my finances, and I'm not going to let you be a part of it. But by gum, when the goose poop hits the fan, you better be there to bail me out. And Frank ended his message last week with a great question. It was a great challenge. It was this. God asked us this question. Are you going to serve stuff and hope that I will help you? Or are you going to serve me and trust that you will always have enough? And and debt is a big part of this, because debt puts a huge stress on us. And I don't know if I know when I've started businesses and stuff, and when you're starting a business and cash flow is lean, and you got a line of credit that you had used to start your business or whatever it is, or you've got credit card debt or stuff, when you've got that financial pressure on you, that is the only thing. You go to bed thinking about it, you wake up thinking about it, and you stress about it all day long. And the last thing on your mind is, God, I just want to serve you. Because all you can think about is, I got to get rid of this debt. So, what I want to do today is I want to give you some ideas on how to get out of debt, and then I want to give you some ideas on how to stay out of debt. But before I do that, what I want to do is I want to tell you 2 myths about debt. And these are common things that I hear time and time again when people talk about getting out of debt. And the first myth is this: I just need to make some more money. I'm going to get that raise in 6 months or a year or whatever, and when I get that raise, well, then everything's going to be okay. And this, I find, is not the case. Because what happens is if someone is if they're in the habit of having improper financial habits, more money doesn't fix a solution. All it does is magnify improper financial habits. I was talking with a guy one time. He doesn't live in Cranbrook. He doesn't live in British Columbia. And he told me, he said, Dan, I make $600,000 a year. That was his gross payroll. $600,000 a year. Now, many of us will be sitting out there going, man, Olivia, if I had $600,000 per year, that would fix all of my problems. I would, oh man, Olivia, that would be the be-all and end-all. I'd never have another issue again. You know what the next thing he told me was? He told me what his biggest stress was. What was his biggest stress? Money and debt. More money didn't fix his problem. And we actually see this in the Bible. It's not going to be on the screen. I'm just going to paraphrase. But in Matthew 25, go back and read it afterwards. In Matthew 25, Jesus tells a great parable. And what it is it's a parable about a landowner or a business owner or whatever he was. And he's got these 3 servants. And he's going on a trip or he's going away somewhere or something. And so what he does is he takes his stuff, he takes his money, and he says to one servant, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 5 bags of gold. And this is my gold, this is my money, you are responsible for it. And to the second one, he says, okay, I'm going to give you 2 bags of my money, and you're to look after this and take care of it. And to the other servant, I'm going to give you 1. He goes away and he comes back, and he says, okay, guys, I had a great time. I was down in Mexico for a month and a half, and you guys have been in charge of my business and everything. Tell me what's happened. So the one servant comes to him and he says, well, I took your 5 bags of gold, and I went and I invested it and I put it to work, and now it's doubled. You now have 10 bags of gold. And the guy says, perfect. I'm going to put you in charge of not just money, but I'm going to put you in charge of something big over here. And to the guy with the 2 bags, he says, what happened? And the guy comes in, he says, well, I took your 2 bags and I invested them, I put them to work, and your 2 bags has multiplied, and now it's 4 bags, it's doubled. And he says, well, that's wonderful. Give me back my bags of gold. I'm going to put you in charge of something that's even more important than gold, more important than money, and so here's your new responsibility. And to the guy with the 1 bag, he comes in, he says, okay, tell me what happened with the bag of gold that I gave you. And the guy says, well, I was nervous I was going to lose it. I didn't know what to do. And so I buried it in the ground, and so here's your bag back. And the guy was furious, and he said, you know that I wanted you to do something with it. He said, why didn't you even just take it down to the bank and get 0.05% interest on it? He says, take that bag of gold from that servant and give it to the guy that has the most. And so the illustration that we see in the Bible is that it's almost like God has a testing period for us of what have I given you right now, and how are you using it right now? And based on what you do with that, I'll give you some more responsibility based on that. And so God is very concerned with how we handle our money. The second myth is I just need to budget. Now, before you tie me up and hamstring me and drag me out into the street, budgeting isn't bad. Budgeting is a good thing. But how most people budget doesn't work, from what I see. So here's what I see most people do. When people come in and they've got those three things, I want to pay off debt, I want to have less stress, and I want to have savings. The way most people budget when they come in and they have those three things that they want to talk about, what they do is they've accumulated some debt, whether it's lines of credit, credit cards, or whatever, and they say, okay, I gotta pay those first, because I got to pay my creditors and make sure I make those payments. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be really good. And I'm going to budget my spending. And so I'm going to spend this much on groceries. I'm going to spend this much on my cable. And this is my utilities. And this is going to be our spending money for going out for dinner. And I'm going to stick to that budget. And then at the end of the month, I'm going to have some left. And whatever's left over, I'm going to take some of that and I'm going to save some of it, or I'm going to give it at church in the offering, or I'm going to give it to a charity or whatever. But I'm going to budget, and I'm going to stick to that budget. So, I work in financial services. And before my paycheck goes into my bank account, the day before payday, how much money do you think that I have in my bank account? 0. The day before payday, I have absolutely no money. The reason being, the day before payday, I'm always looking for something to spend that money on. It's always itching a hole in my pocket. This is how all the exercise equipment is purchased in the world. I got a picture I want to show you right here. The other picture. Okay, this isn't a picture off the internet. This is my basement last night. Okay? That's a weight bench that is being used. It's holding my toolbox. It's holding those are air conditioners sitting in front of it. It's holding my tape measure. So the reason why all of this has come about, and on the other side, there's some dumbbells. You could go to those dumbbells, and you could take your fingers, and you could pick the dust up, and you would have a string of dust hanging down. The reason why I have all this stuff is because the day before payday, I had $20 in my pocket. And another time I had $150 in my pocket. And another time I had $18 in my pocket. And I accumulated all this stuff. The next picture, go to the next one. This is my latest doozy. It's this thing right here. What is that? That's an inversion table. What does an inversion table do? Well, apparently, medically, scientifically, guaranteed, it does some kind of magical healing, blah, 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 blah. Why do I have it? Because I had $164 available to me that I had to spend on something. So what happens is if we budget our expenses and then save whatever's left over, I find it never happens. Because there's always something that you really, really need that 6 months later has to collect dust in your basement. So, what we got to do is we got to attack things differently. So, here's how I find, this is what I recommend to families in order to get out of debt. And I'm gonna go through these, and for some of you, you're gonna sit there and you're gonna say, Dan, that is very illogical. That doesn't make any sense. Why would you do things that way? And the steps are actually, I find, are very important, and they are illogical. They don't, in a lot of cases, they don't make sense. But the reason why they are the way they are is because we are not logical people. Because if we were logical, if we always did the logical thing, we never would have gotten into debt in the first place. Because who wants to, if you're sitting there and you're like, man, 11, that's a nice car. I think I can afford that payment. How many times have you heard, well, you know what, I really love the car, and then 3 months later, man, Olivia, I can't afford this car payment. If we had thought about it ahead of time and gone, man, Olivia, 3 months from now, I'm looking at this, and I'm not going to have enough money to make this car payment, we wouldn't have bought the car in the first place. We wouldn't have gotten into debt in the first place. So the thing we need to understand is we are not logical. And so we need a process that isn't logical, that works against who we are in order to help us to get out of debt. So the first thing is, you got to do it as a family. If you're single, you can do it on your own. But if you're a couple, a family has to be on the same page. If people come to me and they say, I want to sit down with you, I will not get together with one spouse. I have to have both people in the room. Because if both people are not on the same page, a house divided cannot stand. So, you got to do this as a family. Second thing is, you got to trust God with your finances. Now, that's all I'm going to say about this one this week. This week, it's a nice saying. Next week, is it Ian Bird? Ian Bird is going to be here, and he's going to talk about this one, and it is going to mess you up. Okay? But this week, it's just a nice saying, okay? And that's all I'm going to say. Trust God with your finances. Now let's get into the foundational stuff. Ian's going to talk about this one next week. Most people would think, well, I got to start paying down my debt. But the first thing I tell people is, you got to start saving money. This is important for a few reasons. What happens is if you're, and people will say this is illogical because, well, Dan, I'm paying X number of dollars in interest on my line of credit or my credit cards, and if I save money, I'm really not going to make any interest. And so this one, it doesn't make sense that I should start saving money. But is my next slide, it's a list of expenses. I don't know if it's up there. It's going to be after these. Can you find that, Alec? It's a list of household expenses. I don't know if we're going to be able to find it. What it is in your monthly cash flow, what will happen is you got to make your mortgage payment. You got to pay for gas for your vehicle. You got to buy groceries. You got to have some spending money. You also got to budget for things like Christmas. You got to budget for car repairs. You got to budget for house repairs. You got to budget for all this stuff. But what do you notice about some of the expenses? Things like house repairs. Do house repairs happen every month? No. Does Christmas happen every month? No, it only happens in December. And so what happens is I get my $1,000 every 2 weeks, and I go, wow, I got $1,000 to spend. And so I'm going to make another $1,000 2 weeks from now. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to do all this stuff. But if it's July, and I need to really be planning for car repairs and Christmas and stuff like that, that doesn't happen until December, what happens is people will spend money that they're going to need 6 months from now, and they won't account for it because it's not at the top of their mind. And so what I tell people is you got to go through your finances and you got to figure out, I call them annual and periodic expenses. You got to figure out what expenses do I have to pay annually and what expenses do I have to pay periodically, things like car repairs that just kind of spring up and stuff like that. And you got to budget for that. And what I have people do is I have them start saving those amounts of money. Does that make sense? Okay? So then what you're left over with is you're left over with what you need really on an ongoing basis. And I usually find families really only need enough money for 3 things. Gas for your vehicle, groceries, and some spending money. And so I have families save the difference. My wife and I sat down with this, and what we figured out that our annual and periodic expenses amounted to about 40% of what we bring home. And if we aren't careful with that, that stuff can get spent just like that. And that's when you run into situations of December. It's like, oh man, Christmas is coming up. What am I going to do? I got no money because I spent my Christmas money in July. So number one, I tell people you got to start saving money. Second thing is plan your debt payments. And what I like to tell people is attack it 2 ways. Number one, set in your mind how much you want to commit to paying off your debt. Figure out how long you want it to take, figure out what that number is, and allocate that fixed amount to paying off your debt. And what I encourage people to do is go in, we pretty well all got online banking today, and you can set up reoccurring payments. And just put your Visa or your line of credit or whatever it is, just make it an automatic reoccurring payment. Don't let yourself be the one to go in every single month and pick the number, because that number will always get knocked down every single month. So set the amount and just have it come out automatically. Okay? Thirdly, or next thing is figure out how much you actually need. And as I said, what I find most families need is they need fuel money, they need grocery money, and they need some spending money. And what I like to have people do is the next one, use cash. If you've got some debt, what I like to tell people to do is take the credit cards, even the debit card, the Interact card, and put it away. Leave it at home. Put it in your drawer. Don't take it out with you. And just use cash. Whatever that number is for those three things, go to the bank every single week and take that amount of cash out and just use that cash during the week. The reason why this is important is because it is so easy to tap a card. And what happens when we get in the habit of tapping is we lose track of how much we've actually spent. But if you've got the cash in your wallet, you know how much you got left. And you can only spend that amount. And it's amazing how... Oh, thank you. It's amazing how when people do that, people are like, man, I didn't realize I got so much money every week. And I challenge people to have a little bit of money at the end of every week before you go the next week. So there's some ideas on how to get out of debt. Now, once you get out of debt, how do you stay out of debt? So here's the first few things. Number one, I think it's you got to do it as a family. Have we got that up on the screen? Oh, this is how to get out of debt. Next is how to stay out of debt. No? We don't have that? Okay. Number one is, oh, there it is. Okay, same as before. You got to do it as family. You got to work together as a couple. Okay? Number two, same as before. You got to trust God with your finances. Again, I'm not going to talk about this week. This week, Ian Bird is going to talk about that next week. Next, don't compare yourself to others. Save money. Keep saving money. Keep saving money. Next one is, don't compare yourself to others. Is that the next one? Okay, excellent. What can happen is, it's the old adage of keeping up with the Joneses. You'll look at people and you'll think, man, a living, they've got it all together. They've got all the stuff. They've got all the toys. And what I typically find is, particularly if I'm going to meet with people my age, if I go and I meet with a family who's in their, mid-20s to mid-30s, and if they've got the boat and 2 brand new vehicles and the fancy house and they go to Mexico every year on vacations and stuff like that, I usually find those people are really stressed out financially because they're overextending themselves. The other thing is, and this is for people my age, people that are millennials and things like that, guys, we can't compare ourselves to our parents. We can't compare ourselves to the baby boomers because what has happened is our parents, we don't see where our parents were 30 years ago or 40 years ago when they were starting out. My parents would tell the stories of, I think my parents' first home was like 500 square feet, and it was on a foundation of logs. Like it wasn't even slab on grade. Like, we don't see where our parents came from and what they went through. We only see where they're at today. And I find a lot of young people my age want to be where their parents are at right now. But they don't want to put in the time and the effort that they did in order to get there. They just want to be there right now. And a lot of young people are overextending themselves. And guys, it's not worth the stress. It really isn't worth it. Okay? Next is, be careful what you buy. Accumulate assets rather than liabilities. And what I've got is, I want to go to the next slide. I've got a list of stuff here, and I want you to, don't yell out, but I want you to pick out what are the assets and the liabilities. So let's put that slide up. So we've got all this stuff. We've got a mortgage, we've got a car, we've got stocks, a business house, savings bonds, and all this kind of stuff, okay? What I want you to do is, don't say out loud, but in your mind, I want you to identify which ones are assets and which ones are liabilities, okay? Now, I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands, but go to the next slide. Some of you may have pared it down to this, and we would think these are the assets. Car, stocks, business, a house, savings bonds, rental property, things like that. I actually look at that list and I actually still see some liabilities up there. Let's go to the next one. Realistically, this is the only one that I see up there that are actually assets. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to bring up the ones that sometimes we think are assets, but are actually liabilities. Things like vehicles. A lot of people I've heard the term vehicle and equity tied together. That's a fallacy. It doesn't exist. Cars are depreciable assets that go down in value. They always go down in value. And people will say, like, I drive a Jeep, and my Jeep is probably worth about $3,000. Okay? My wife and I, we use it as our bush vehicle going out to camp. And I know I'm sitting on about, I'm going to need a transmission within the next 3 years. It's going to cost me about $3,500, $4,000. The Jeep is worth $3,000. And a lot of people would say, well, man, Olivin, why would you put $4,000 into a $3,000 vehicle? But realistically, my $3,000 Jeep isn't worth $3,000. I looked it up. My $3,000 Jeep is actually worth $38,749. You know how I came up with that number? That's the price of a brand new Jeep. So my $3,000 Jeep isn't worth $3,000. It's worth almost $40,000. Because if I keep it and I just repair it, a $4,000 transmission is a whole lot cheaper than $38,490. If I can find $38,490 worth of work that needs to be done in my Jeep, I'm going to have a really cool Jeep. Okay? The next one is houses. Quite often people they'll get in the mode that I got to pay down my mortgage. I got to pay down my mortgage. I got to pay down my mortgage because my house is my main asset. My house is my most valuable asset. Realistically, a house isn't the house that you live in, unless it's a rental property or something like that you're making money off of. Your house isn't an asset because you have to live in your house. You don't live off of your house. And the other thing is, if you're going to buy and sell houses, people will say, well, my house is going to go up in value. Well, yeah, your house is going to go up in value, but so is everybody else's. So when you sell your house is going to be up in value, and so is everybody else's. So you always buy and sell your house most of the time. Sometimes it doesn't work out like that. But for most people buy and sell their houses in the same market. So your house really isn't an asset. You got to put money into it every single month. And of course, things like boats and cabins. And realistically, what these are things that are either depreciable assets or they're things that you have to put money in that takes money out of your cash flow every single month. And these are things people can get tripped up on these in their finances that, well, if I accumulate these things, I'm okay. So be careful what you buy. So I've got some homework for you, and we're running out of time here, so I'm just going to skip through this pretty quickly. So here's your homework for this week. Number one, I challenge you, start using cash. Just try it. My wife and I did this for 3 months when we got married, and it was amazing what it did for us. Try doing it this week. Figure out how much you need for those 3 things that I identified, and try leaving your cards at home and start using cash. Number 2, we've got a financial peace course, and if this message has spoken to you at all today, I want to encourage you to sign up for financial peace. And sorry, Scott, we're out of time here. But Scott, sign up for the financial peace course. Scott and Liz Tracy teach it. And if you hear Scott and Liz Tracy's story, they lived this out. They walked through it. And they have an amazing story, and we've heard stories of other people in our church that have gone through this, and amazing things have happened. So we've got a sign-up board at the Ask Me booth. Just go write your name down. At this point, we don't know when it's going to happen. The plan is the next class will happen in the new year. But if we get a lot of interest in it, Scott and Liz have said that they'd be willing to do one before Christmas, before we all go out and spend a bunch of money on maxing out the credit cards. Okay? Next one is, financial peace is great, but I really want to encourage people, if you don't have a financial advisor that you work with, I really want to encourage you to find a financial advisor. And I don't say this because I'm looking for clients or anything. I've actually, if you want to come and talk to me, I've actually got names of 3 of my competitors. I'd be willing to give you their names and phone numbers. I've got names of consultants in our office. The other thing is, maybe you have someone around you, a family member or a friend, and you know that they have a financial advisor. Ask them who that person is and ask if you can get a referral to them. Or, if you've had someone that's been phoning you and harassing you, and you've been going, no, I'm too busy, I don't have time, next time they phone you, maybe book an appointment with them. You can do it at your bank, wherever. Find out who your bank's financial advisor is and go in and see them. The reason why this is important is because, how many of you know who Ipsos Reid is? Polling agency? Ipsos Reid did a study in 2010, and what they found was people that work with an advisor have more in assets than people that don't. And it's kind of like having a fitness coach. We know that people who have a fitness coach or a trainer or something, they're more likely to excel with athletics, or they're more likely to stick with it. They're more likely to be more physically in shape. And it's the same thing with finances. If you have someone that comes alongside of you and is they're kind of like an accountability partner, they kind of help hold your feet to the fire, it's an important part of someone's financial success. And finally, the last thing is, come next week. I'm not even joking. This message next week is going to be crucial for some of you guys. Okay? Let's pray. Lord God, I just thank you for this day, and I thank you for everyone here. And Lord God, you see each and every one of us, and you see the challenges we face, and I know I've faced them at times in my life, and you know what I'm like, and you know that I always don't make the best decisions with my money. But Lord God, you know it's so important that we honor you through our money. And so, Lord God, I just pray that you would help each and every one of us to search inside ourselves and figure out, okay, what is it that I need to be doing? What's my next step? What are you challenging me to, God? And help us to do that. Because, God, you want us to be using our finances for your glory. And you are a good God. You have given us our finances, and we thank you for that. In Jesus' name, amen. So as I said, if you want to sign up for that financial peace course, there's a sign-up booth at the Ask Me booth. If you'd like to come and talk to me afterwards, by all means, or Frank, Scott and Liz Tracy. Scott, can you stand up and wave your hand? If you have questions about financial peace, go and ask them to tell you their story. So that's it, and we'll see you next week. And let's get you guys going so that you can go pick up your kids and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for coming.